Hello and welcome to EduCurious, where we highlight exceptional educators and dive deep into complex issues. Today we have special guest Dave Martelli, who's the founder of Guildhall Learning. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell me about yourself. I want to hear all about your journey.
At the moment, I am running a small engineering school. There's a couple of them, and we focus on helping kids learn how to learn how to take kind of what's in their mind and then put it out there, figure out a plan and action, all the steps required to actually be able to create the things that they have stored in their amazing imagination. And we're there to support them along the way by giving them access to tools, mentors with industry knowledge, and just general encouragement so that they know that they can feel vulnerable and really go after their passions, really go after their creativity in a safe space that allows for it and encourages it.
You are in a different state than I'm in. You're talking about a physical location where kids come to you. Is that correct?
We have 3 locations in Massachusetts, in Boston, Woburn, and Natick, which are kind of pretty decent sized hubs for education as well as for industry. And then we also work with other schools and educators, nonprofits, and we can either be physically in person or we can host training to help educators kind of learn our methodologies as well.
If I, being in Florida, wanted to reach out to you because I'm an educator interested in learning more and helping my kids learn, tell me how I'd go along that route.
So you'd go to our website first, which is Guild, Guild, Hall, Hall, learning.com. And on there is a little link for training services. And then basically what we'll do is book a call with us. And we have standard kind of things that we teach, but we customize everything to each individual school's specific needs, as well as the resources that they have. A popular one recently has been how to integrate in a ethical manner, as well as respectful to pedagogy, AI tools and systems, all the way from K to 12 also, not just like colleges are asking for that. How do they start bringing those tools in, both from a teacher's perspective and being able to have it help add creativity to your lesson plans, add more individualized worksheets or whatever for your students. And also we have a daycare that we're attached to that's been using it to make custom music for different activities that they're going. Instead of just having like the standard cleanup song, they've tailored it to the things that are in their room, and it sings a song so that each kid in the classroom hears their name coming out and they go and pick up their thing. It's been really cool, some of the things people have been able to come up with and use for those things.
Tell me a little bit about you. I just met you today and I read a little bit about you, but tell me about your journey from what really ignited your passion and why are you in the educational field right now?
When I was a kid, I was one of those kids that didn't have an amazing experience in the kind of traditional education system. This was back in the 80s. They had no idea what ASD really was. They didn't really, ADHD was a brand new thing that they didn't understand very well, intended to over-medicate and all those sort of things. I had all of those things. What it ended up turning into was I was hyper passionate and interested in very technical things. If there was a Lego robot or something in the room, I would get deeply fascinated by that thing. But when it came to my normal schoolwork, I wasn't very good at sitting and staying in line. A lot of things happened in around that, even starting from grade school. But the part that really started making me think about it was in middle school. I learned about a competition called Robot Wars. It was started by a gentleman in San Francisco called Mark Thorpe, and is exactly what you think you'd see on TV today, an earlier version of that, which is people would build these massive metal robots that were super overpowered, and then they would just attack each other and try and destroy each other's robot. I was super fascinated by it. I decided, hey, I have a middle school, that has a metal shop and no computers or electronics, but they got a metal shop and I know robots are made out of metal. I weaseled my way into the teacher. I said, hey, I would love to, in this class, if I could really base what I'm doing here off of this, which I really want to learn how to do, build this robot. He was constrained by the administration that I had to get through the particular curriculum. I made a great deal with Guy. I said, hey, I'll do the entire year's curriculum in the next 2 weeks. And then we can work on this and that'll be great, right? He said yes, which was amazing because I have to imagine he got a lot of flack for it. Got through the curriculums, stayed after class, did all the things, and was able to start my robot. Built Psychotron, which was my robot, so a great Megadeth song. And it turned into this pyramid kind of looking thing with the head of Bill Clinton with spikes on the back of his head and spikes everywhere. Imagine if you're a principal for a moment and you just see a small tin can basically with spikes coming out of it everywhere with a Megadeth song going, just rolling down the thing. And this is like in the early 90s, right? Robots weren't quite as prevalent as they are now. So that was a very, very quick trip into suspension. I imagine that the teacher also got a stern talking to. And I also got hammered a little bit because I was to get into that project, I was working faster on my English work so I could get out of English class earlier. Apparently, that was also a no-go that I didn't know. Not only did I get myself in trouble, I got a lot of teachers in trouble. Fast forward, I had a lot of other experiences like that. And as I got older, I went to a trade school, a tech school. I went into computers and I spent my whole time there. I had been in computers my entire life. I knew most of the stuff that they were teaching, and the teachers weren't really allowed very much to give me more than what was on their stated curriculum because there was testing and stuff like that that was going. So we had 5 periods, I remember, and I got almost all of the work done in the first half of the first period. And then I would just play video games for the rest of the time and get in trouble if I got caught. As I got older and I got into industry, I realized that I was excelling at industry. I had had several startups that were fairly successful that I worked with. I did not go to college. Circle a couple more years later, I had senior positions in Northrop Grumman, which is a major, one of the top military contractors. It got recruited directly into the Department of Defense to be able to work on more complicated stuff. I then burnt out from that. I got a job heading up computer science and engineering for school, specifically a school for gifted kids. So it was kind of ironic to me. I'm saying is like I failed every single school I've ever attended, and I'm the one presenting awards to my best students. That we had a kid that did a competition for an AI project. He won $500,000 for coming up with a new discovery on how to better understand how AI thinks while it's generating the stuff. So it's really weird to me, all of these coincidences, which leads me to my teaching style, which was I tended to be extremely successful in what I wanted to do, which was more technical than the things that the people around me were allowing me to do. If I was a less stubborn person, which is good or bad, depends on who you ask, I would have gave up. It was extraordinarily lucky that I had a few teachers that kind of allowed me to go outside the rules. And then those teachers ended up getting hammered for it, which wasn't particularly fair in my mind. And I got hammered for it, which also sucked. All of these traditional educational systems that were there at the time were doing its best to stop me from what eventually made me the most successful. And in a lot of cases, more successful than a lot of my peers that were like the straight A students. It made me curious. If there were more kids that were out there that were like me, they were deeply passionate or deeply interested and wanted to go above and beyond, but they didn't have the infrastructure when they're still young and creative and not like beaten down by the world, but they don't have the resiliency or the stubbornness that I had. What can we do to make sure that those kids don't get fizzled out? What do we do to make it so that those kids have an environment that they need to be able to grow as fast as they want to grow and really go off on their own while being supported and create the person that they want to be instead of, generally speaking, being tested into the person that someone else says that they should be. In the school I was working for, a program where from 3 years old up to about high school, we're all doing computer science and engineering curriculum that I designed. We'd built a makerspace for it. We had a VR lab, everything set for it. And each kid was working on their own project that they had come up with, right? It was within a scope of a rubric that we had, but that rubric was designed loose by nature so that they could really discover. For example, we had a kid that wanted to do robotics, but we were in a programming section that favored game development, right? We made a deal with them. Okay, I'll make the robot, or you can elicit another student to make a robot for you. You have to make a controller that allows you to go into VR and control that robot from inside your virtual reality goggles, right? It was a really interesting project and a very advanced project, but it really hit on their thought of, okay, I can work on this now because there's something I'm really interested in that will kind of help leverage that. Once COVID happened, we had, imagine 150 students, all with individualized projects, with all individualized learning pathways that I could barely keep track of while I'm sitting there staring each one of them in the eyes. COVID happens. We have to do all of this stuff remotely. And I realize how tremendously difficult that is. Me being me, that sounded like an amazing software challenge, something that could potentially have a tool that helps deal with that. So that's where guild came from. Guild stands for Guided Universal Intelligent Learning Device, right? It is an AI before LLMs and ChatGPT and the things was around, but close enough, luckily, that was able to take that kid, right? Figure out as much as it can about the kid. So it ask questions what it's into. It would understand what it's already what the kid is already messed with as far as like circuitry or programming languages, what have you. And it'll track all of that and keep their interests in mind while it's trying to support them, giving them new projects or kind of suggesting to steer in ways so that they continue to develop and strengthen their skills rather than just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Offers other things that are somewhat tangential, but from an industry perspective are super useful. A programmer could use to learn databases or web design or something like that at some point, right? And it would kind of guide them this entire way. And I realized at that point, oh God, this could help, right? This could actually help a bunch of teachers that are not technical in nature be able to get the grading part down, right? If my teacher had this when I was a kid, right, they could say, hey, these are the general things you need to learn. What can you do that you're passionate about that weaves in these goals? And then that would allow the administration to be okie dokie because they have the ability to see that there's things actually being tracked. And the systems tend to be so complex, it's hard to track them. A teacher is tired from their job because teachers have the hardest job ever. It supports them and helps them to be able to track the kid so that they feel confident in what the kid is doing, even if the teacher doesn't know what's going on necessarily, right? It just allows for the frameworks and allows for the infrastructure for a kid to be able to take their passion, take their learning journey, and put it into their own hands while still being able to hit the check marks. We tried it in COVID. We tried it about I want to say 12 schools across 6 countries. We put about 2 months of development into it and immediately got it out. It worked in about 3 or 4 of them. The world was too complex for it at the time for it to work in like Argentina had problems. They had nothing other than the school there had nothing other than Chromebooks and their internet was terrible and they didn't know what a circuit or a wire was at that point versus the guy in Texas that had all of these things and was kind of already into it. We realized that the problem was too big. We started Guild Hall, the Hall of Guild, because it was kind of a game to start off with, which is an enclaved area to test teaching methodologies and modalities to understand how to prepare instructors to be able to use these systems, to be able to give freedom to the students to pave their own learning path. That's what Guildhall does now is we help kids learn whatever it is that they're interested in. And we have freedom because we're not a traditional school. So we can kind of let them do kind of whatever. But we work with traditional schools to build out the softwares, the systems, the hardware to be able to make it so that they can support a curriculum and a ridiculously fast changing industry that is computer science, engineering, STEM in general, right? The world in general, and support them so that they can kind of weave through the difficulties of that while still making sure they're hitting all their traditional benchmarks. We're even now partnering with Southern New Hampshire University and a couple other colleges to figure out if we can get early college learning pathways and micro-credentialing in. As you're going through doing the project that you would normally be doing anyways, it'll look at all of the key points that you hit on and say, oh, did you know if you do these 1 or 2 more things, you can get certified by Microsoft to be able to use these systems. And then now you're job ready at 14 or 18 or whenever. The ultimate goal is how do we enable that kid? Somewhere there is a kid that has the cure for cancer. Somewhere is the kid that could make the next greatest transportation technology. What happens if that kid is in an infrastructure that cannot support all of the necessary learning, all of the necessary encouragement to make it so that they can do that and actually get to where they need to be? Someone like we work with the Department of State for an international exchange program. We had one kid come in and they were in electrical engineering is what they came in for, doing robotics and stuff like that. They're there for a week. And the girl was super, super happy to do it because it turns out it was illegal for her to study this in her country. That kid might be able to figure out cold fusion. Who knows? It's a probability game. If you allow this level of education, this level of curiosity to continuously foster, then we have the greatest chance at being able to allow any kind of expansion and continuous development of humans and the planet, right? And that's I guess now what I'm the most passionate about is making sure that the kids that have a passion can follow that and learn all of the things necessary to be able to sustain it, no matter where they are, no matter what economic system they're in, no matter what around them is trying to stop them as hard as they can. Like as soon as they get to be an adult, everything is going to try and stop you. My 4-year-old is trying to stop me from getting out the door in the morning, and she loves me as much as she can. It's not just the whispers and the shadows that come after you. It's everything and just life in general that will try and slow you down and stop you. How do you give as much as you can to be in your corner so that you can really get out there and have the best chance of making the world and humanity a better place?
It's all about the teacher preparedness to unlock the creativity, the aspects of learning that a kid might not know they're able to do instead of trying to fit in the box. With the teacher preparedness part, where do you see that we need to be spending time working on that new wave of teachers that are in college right now? What's your take on how to prepare teachers that will be out in the field soon for better instruction in the world?
An unpopular and uncomfortable thing that I think is super, super important. You have to, as a teacher, be comfortable having no idea what's going on. ChatGPT has existed for 2 years, and it is in every single product that you can imagine. My refrigerator that has ChatGPT in it, right? Everything. Because of that, it is impossible for you to keep up with the state of technology and the state of what careers will look like. And you just kind of have to get comfortable with that. Your students are going to start asking you about things or to use things that you don't know how to use. Being able to really dive into that discomfort and sit there and say, hello, student, I have no idea what this is or how to do it, but we can figure it out together, is an extraordinarily strong phrase. It's an extraordinarily strong tactic for a couple of reasons. One, you're teaching the kid as an adult, as a peer, as a mentor, that you don't have all the answers, and that's okay. The most standard thing you hear a kid thinks about when they're younger is, oh God, you're an adult, you just know it all. My kid, I say, I have no idea all the time. And they still come back, well, you just know it, don't you? Like, no, I have no idea. And that more accurately prepares them for the world, because there's a saying, none of us have any idea what we're doing. And that's generally speaking fairly accurate, especially when you get into more complex things. Having the way of handling that question of, hey, how do I do this? And you saying, I don't know, but we can figure it out, is honest. It allows the kid to have a framework built in reality, but it also gives them a thought that, okay, it's all right not to know, which will help them a lot in their teenage years. It's okay to be uncomfortable. And you can vocalize that as like, oh, this is kind of scary. I'm not sure about this. And then work through that messy process that is looking at the new thing and trying to figure it out to the best of your ability as a teacher in a classroom full of 30 people. And that can just be a few seconds. Like, hey, how do I do this? I don't know. Have you tried asking Google? If you're allowed to use a version of ChatGPT that's specifically for education, have you asked that? And then have them come back to you with the response, I think it could be done this way, but I'm not sure. Or I'm nervous about this. What do you think? And then navigating that conversation back and forth with them. The most important thing I think you can do as a teacher is just being okay, showing discomfort to the kid, and not discomfort as in I'm scared everywhere and I need to hide, but discomfort is in I'm not sure what this is. Let's try and figure it out. That's the best thing you can do. Because if you imagine 2 years ago, GPT didn't exist. Now it's everywhere. It's only accelerating how fast that is happening. Their world that they will be entering into is full of things that they will have to deal with every day, the last day it didn't exist. And they will have to be okay navigating the constantly evolving and changing worlds. And what's cool about that also is the more you start thinking, oh, I don't know. I know those people used to do it this way, but now there's a new technology. So maybe I should do it a different way. And I should feel comfortable doing something in the way I've never done it before. The more you start doing that, the better you start getting a prediction model to be able to figure out what's coming up next. You'll see this in software a lot. The best developers in the world at the moment are building for something that cannot work yet. The head of Google said this very recently. I think Anthropic guy said it as well. If you're designing AI systems and computer programs at the moment that are so ridiculously out into left field that there's any possibility that it could work with today's technology, then you're going to miss the boat and you're already going to be behind the curve. You have to develop for technologies and you have to predict technologies that aren't going to exist for another several months or several years. And that's the only way to develop something that will actually be useful.
This requires a whole shift in mindset within students that maybe are in the traditional field or with teachers that are learning how to become educators. Shift that whole mindset. I have heard a lot of people, and maybe I've had this too, but like fear of like, what if I break it?
I like the story of Elon Musk. The guy built, or not him, an entire his company. They built a rocket ship, and the idea was for it to go up. The rocket went up and then exploded. And you imagine a traditional engineer sitting there going like, I just built that thing. That's terrible. And the traditional business person saying that is $500 million of risk that just got added to me. The mindset that was of that company and of any fast moving company was, we're expecting it to go wrong. What's fascinating about it blowing up was not a surprise. It's going to break. And that allows them to shift their mindset from a fear of something breaking to a very precise look at, what do I think is going to break? And how do I put little cameras or little whatevers, like my attention on the thing so I can be looking at it close enough. When it does break, I notice why. And then I will be able to say, oh, I got it. It was this thing. Or, oh, a door came off the airplane. Would have never saw that coming off in my life, but there it went. Reality does not care at all about your feelings. Just like physics, we are all victims of physics. We have our partners, our support network, our mentors, and everything to talk us through those things. And you definitely need that. Children need a mentor to talk them through that really set on fire, didn't it? Adding a little bit of humor into it, if you can, as that mentor helps a bit, because that de-stresses the situation a little bit. But like, you shouldn't be focused on, oh God, will it break? I got to make sure it doesn't break. You should be focused on, how is it going to break and what can I learn from that to make a better system? Anyone, no one can make anything new and get it right the first time. It'd be weird. Look at a baby. A baby steps for the first time. It steps up and it go face plants. We don't say, you broke it. You broke your walking gait. I'm sorry. Oh my God, never try that again. What if it happens again? Then the baby would never walk. They'd never do anything. Generally speaking, you sit there, you giggle a little bit because it was cute, and then you encourage them to get up. But look at them. Like, the first time my baby fell over, the first thing is like, oh God, what happened? They weren't expecting that. And then they immediately look at their parent to see the reaction that they're supposed to have. And if you're going like, oh, it broke, the baby's going to be like, I ain't trying that again. That's uncomfortable. I don't like that. If you do the same thing to turning on your projector in your classroom because you might hit the wrong button, what are you telling to your students about how comfortable they should be about playing with technology? You have to call the IT guy in every single time you need to turn your printer on or plug it in. What are you saying about, we're educators here, we're the elite of knowledge. We got to hire someone else. That's their job. They'll come in and deal with it for us. No, you got to engage with it. Technology is everyone. Just like that baby, you have to say, oh, I'm expecting you to fall the first time. And when you do it, I'm going to giggle a little bit because, oh, that blew up in kind of a cool way. And then you allow them that agency, you allow them that freedom to go in and try new things. You cannot create anything new if you're not willing to do something new. And the probability that you do it correct the first time is almost zero. And in coding, I like the phrase, if you run your program and it works the first time, just wait 5 minutes. Something will stop working or do something weird that you don't expect. And that's how you should approach everything. Expect that it's going to break. Be okay with it. Be encouraging when it does. Keep safety in mind. If you're like, maybe setting a bonfire in the middle of my classroom would be a great idea. No, that's probably not good. Talk the kid away from that. But for most things, like most electronics that they could play with, cost nothing, almost $10 for an Arduino. Most computers, you could give it off to an IT person or fix it yourself if you can, and they'll just wipe the whole thing and then come back. If you lost your entire Google Doc, okay, write it again. You've learned, and now there's a little bit of punishment to know, oh, next time maybe I won't hit the delete all button as quickly. But those are learning experiences. You have to learn how to navigate failure. You have to navigate going into the discomfort. Otherwise, your entire life, you'll be a slave to someone else that's willing to do that. and you'll have no choice in the matter. If you want to forever work for the same person and have them tell you every single thing that you're going to do and have no autonomy and that's your comfort zone, that's amazing and do that. But I would rather you have the choice so that at the end of the day, you could say, "Oh, I can do this and I like to do it. So therefore I'm going to," versus I really wish I could do this thing, but I'm too scared.
What do you foresee some of the careers coming along at a rapid pace that we need to make sure that our students are ready to embrace and not go in fearful?
Technology is already part of everything. And obviously, I am a technologist. Therefore, that tends to be where I stick around. There are some jobs that robots and tech will not take over. And there are some jobs that will always favor a human touch. There's an unlimited type of job market out there, but how many people can penetrate into those markets will be different. For example, I can go to Costco and get a 500 pack of napkins for like $2. That has been completely industrialized and it's easy to get a napkin. That being said, I know of a guy that has him and his wife have a wedding napkin business, and they have a several $1 million a year business making napkins personally for weddings, right? That industry has already been disrupted by technology, by manufacturing, by all the infrastructure that is our modern world. But there's still a place for the artisan. The microbrewery thing has gone and been gigantic. You can get a standard like Sam Adams or whatever from anywhere, and it's fairly cheap. You'll pay more for the experience that is the micro brewed with love from a person experience. There will always be artistic and there will always be traditional jobs and traditional passions. I never want to say if you have a passion for making traditional inks that are used in Chinese hand sealing that takes you 2 weeks to roll that out, you go ahead, man. Figure out the economics if you want to have a stable income around it. But there is a high chance that you can do that. Those sort of things will always exist. But if you're looking for kind of more of a mainstream business or a mainstream employment or something like that, AI has the ability to be a tool that can allow you to do anything that you want to do faster as a business. A business exists to serve a particular need and make money. If you don't make money, you don't have the resources to be able to serve that need. It is within a business economic interest to make sure that it is as efficient as possible to deliver that need. I can make a better image for a particular type of marketing using AI, not necessarily because it'll come out better, but I'll get it faster, right? And at scale, right? As a business, I am more apt to use that AI solution. If you're an artist, if you learn how to use these solutions, AI, right, to make those images, you will likely be able to use it to make a better image than I can. Right? Martin Scorsese will make a better 3D, AI generated video than I will. Right? The fundamental job of the artist, the fundamental job of the developer, the engineer, right, is still the same. It's just the tools allow you to do it in a slightly different way. Right? Those jobs will continue to exist, most likely. AI is really good at making whatever we tell it to make, and with the concreteness of the description that we ask it to make it. The more of an artist you are, you could draw with a pencil, but now I can use Photoshop that has shaders. It's still me, the artist, and I, as an artist, could make this better than someone that's not an artist. Now, the AI is just another Photoshop, basically. It allows me to take what I'm trying to make and make it in a way that potentially wasn't possible before, right? If you have a passion with electronics, right? Still learn electronics, right? Start incorporating the new technologies and AIs and stuff like that into your systems so you can learn how to leverage those tools as what they are, a tool. If you are an artist, do the same thing. If you're a coder, coding used to be the kind of blue collar, it used to be a white collar, it's now a blue collar job. Me sitting there and pounding out like 150 lines of quality Python code would take me, I don't know, half an hour. I can now use Anthropic to get the same exact thing done in approximately 30 seconds. You can think about that two different ways. No, me as a coder, I'm losing my job. Sure, but you as a developer that's coming up with the idea for the program and then can prompt the development software to actually do specifically what you're looking for. Now you have all the tools in the world to make that way easier. No one would argue, oh my God, everything should be done in punch cards. If I'm not writing pure binary, then I'm not programming. And people did argue that back then. When punch cards were a thing and basic, as was called assembly language came out, the punch card guys said, no, that's not real coding. And then, no, that shouldn't replace me. And then machine language got replaced with higher level programming like C++ and stuff like that. And then the machine code guys came over and said, it's not as good and you shouldn't be taking my job away. And then now we can make more and more complex programs. AI will come in, we'll be able to make computer programs, hardware systems that could never have been imagined before. We can make physics that we did not understand. There is a organization that made a new style of antenna that is way better than anything. Like, it has better fidelity and it can reach longer distances for communication than anything that anyone has ever come up with before of this type of antenna. And the people that made it using the AI have absolutely no idea why it works. It discovered new things for them based off of them knowing what to ask it, them knowing specifically what they're looking for. It did the job better than any human could have, which allowed them to make a new antenna that will allow you to potentially speak to Mars much quicker. That allows that kind of communication to exist, right? Use AI, right? Use all of the tools that come out every day. I can't tell you what technology to focus on because it hasn't been created yet. Right. Use everything that comes out. Just look at what the buzzwords that are coming out and look into it and see, oh, does this seem like something that could be useful for what I'm trying to do? It is more important to teach your kids to be able to try something new and then try something else new and then learn how to navigate that than getting them to use a specific tool. Imagine you as a kindergartner, and then imagine your teacher trying to predict the tools that you have access to right now to be able to run this podcast. Imagine the podcast industry didn't exist. Internet didn't exist. It's now bigger. Podcasting is bigger than traditional media now. No one of our teachers, even in high school probably, could have ever predicted that. If you're teaching an elementary school kid, you have to kind of get set in their mind that we have no idea. We just have to make sure we're preparing you to be able to figure it out as it emerges so that you as quickly as possible can adapt it. The most important thing you can do as a teacher right now is to teach the kid that things are changing constantly. The tools that they'll use have not even been dreamt of yet, right? Learning to foster that creative mind and go into a new system and learning how to jump in and learn something new and play and mess up and break, right? Most important skill you can possibly have, because that will transcend to any technology that exists. Be open-minded. Don't be rigid. Don't say this is the way it must be done, because the way it must be done for these kids doesn't exist yet. Right? You have to be okay with that, which is hard as a teacher, incredibly hard as a teacher, because you've been trained on pedagogy all day long, right? But like, the world that was created for doesn't exist anymore. Just imagine the world these kids are stepping into.
What's your advice for principals and administrators within schools helping equip their teachers with what they need to make students successful?
I think the hardest part that administrators are going to have is the hardest part that administrators have in any organization is that the higher up the run you go and the further away from the ground truth that you go, the more you rely on paper to tell you what's going on, right? You have your specific metrics, your KPIs, your OKRs, whatever you're using, right? To measure the successfulness, right, of your educational platform, be it a school or a college or whatever. The traditional way that you were doing that before is too slow. There are technologies being developed at the moment that can help you get close to the ground truth and adjust what you're seeing from the kids at a more fundamental level than what tests are allowed for. A good example would be math program, Alex. Alex is a math program, ALEKS. Each kid goes through their math curriculum guided by an AI tutor. It's set up as specific modules, like you're taking algebra 1 section 1 and geometry 1 section 1, but it goes all the way down. We use it in our kindergarten programs as well, but it individualizes for each kid. So every kid is a separate at their own level, and it retests certain concepts as they're going so that they can see where each kid is. And then it has the ability to report up the chain as well. You can see trends. If you notice your entire school is trending towards this, or this one classroom is trending towards this competency and is going faster, this is going to be hard for traditional schools. This kid is already at a calculus level in sixth grade, which is not unheard of. We had a kid at Sage that was in pre-calc in first grade. It can happen. Being able to see that kid and realize, hey, this kid needs to be in a different environment in order to encourage that kid to grow. Tools like that allow you to see the outliers and then move them where they need to be. How you develop the social emotional environment to be able to support that kid at the age that they're at is dependent on your school system as well, because different organizations, different states put different value on the social emotional aspect. But from a skills development standpoint, the better grasp you can get at trends across all and then have a way to zoom in on outliers allows you to then move kids into different places to make sure, even if it's just for one class, to make sure that they have the ability to continuously being challenged in whatever it is that they're being good at. If this kid's calculus level in this, and they're in second grade, but they're in first grade in reading, they should be in two different peer groups for those two different things, because they need something pushing them over here and they need someone encouraging them and giving them extra scaffolding over here. And allowing your organization to have the flexibility to do that will become more and more important as these tools get better and better. The middle of the road approach that was traditionally for school, we'll look at the best performing students and we'll let them fizzle out, and maybe we'll give them an extra worksheet every now and then. And the kid that missed a class, I'm sorry you missed the class, make it up some other time, right? There's no excuse for that anymore. We have better data now, right? I grew up in kind of a rough neighborhood, so I'll give you a kind of realistic of what I saw in my neighborhood. Was the middle of the road kids, which represents 30% of your average student, right, will feel really comfortable for their school experience. They're always where they need to be. Every now and then they're a little plus or minus, but for the most part, they're doing good, right? The kids that feel behind don't have the scaffolding or the structure, and they feel like idiots, right? And then they feel bad, which means they learn less, right? Because they don't have the systems to support there. And then they go over and they do drugs and they go into jail. And then you have the kids that are all the way up at the top of the run that do not get encouragement for being better. In fact, a lot of times they get told, just get out of my way. I got to deal with these kids. They get, in some cases, punished for being ahead of the game because they're taking up teaching resources for an already overwhelmed teacher. And you can't really blame the teacher either because they're overwhelmed. They're stuck in a class of 30 individuals trying to manage it all and like ride the wave that is education. That kid eventually stops paying attention because there's no motivation for them to do so. They've been taught not to. And then they turn into the lower third of the class. And then they take up alcohol and then they go to jail. Ultimately, we're trying not to have that be the outcome. Ultimately, the job is that we want every kid to be able to turn into the best version of whatever they're going to be, which requires us allowing them to be the best and the worst case of everything they're going to be, and then helping them learn how to navigate that. From a teacher's perspective, so that's administration. Get the tools required to be able to make administration moves and encourage the complexity that is an educational system. You'll only get more and more tools to help you with this, right? Your job is to find staff that is able to deal with the technology, for one, to be able to understand what's going on, and that can be social emotional mentors for those kids to make sure that they're always comfortable wherever they happen to get put in, and they're always encouraged and they have that supporting ecosystem so that they can continuously grow. Even if AI takes over every teaching role that there is, I can have a camera on my laptop that looks at the eyes of a student and notices blinking patterns and off gaze patterns, and then can train itself to figure out the exact attention span a kid has on any particular type of task that we're going, so that gives it specifically the right type of information so that the learning is optimized specifically for that kid. Let's say that we have a computer system that can do that, which we can, like that's technology that exists. Computer and an AI cannot teach a kid to be human. It cannot teach them how to make friends. It cannot teach them encouragement. It cannot teach them intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. It cannot give them purpose. You as a person can give a computer purpose and tell them what to do. AI is really good at that. I tell the computer to do this, it goes and does it, but it's not really good at the reverse. Maybe one day, and who knows? But at the moment, it's not very good at the reverse. So the computer only does what we trained it to do. As a human, your teacher is to be the human. Allow yourself to help that student gaze through the ever-changing, complex world that is both learning something and doing something that represents work, which is constantly evolving, and also the peer group, the having friends, the hormones, everything that is hard and difficult about growing with this uncertainty, right? And you as a teacher, learn the tech as best as you can, but be focused more on being the human that each individual kid needs in order to navigate through that complexity and uncertainty. That's the best thing you can do, even more than learning to what questions to ask on a quiz to get the best whatever.
Expand on what you think an ideal learning environment looks like. And I'm thinking it's probably what you built with Guildhall Learning, but if you could have your wish fulfilled and all of education got the reboot and started over, what would that look like?
There are Montessori schools, there are Socratic schools, there are there's very traditional classical, there's Russian classical schooling, there's environmental, which you see more in Costa Rica. Different people need different things. The ability to leverage and say that I cannot be the right thing for everyone is really the best model that there can be. When they come into Guildhall, every kid gets interviewed, and the interview goes through a process to figure out what they're into, what they don't like, what they do like, what their nerdisms are, and everything about that kid, right? And then they figure out some projects and they start working on those things. They are in an environment, it is a big open studio, right? We only go into other rooms if there's a reason to do a specific other thing, like there's a wood shop and a metal shop specifically for those tasks. But generally speaking, when they're done with that, they go back into the main studios. Purpose behind that is that you should be exposed to other people of different nerdisms, and potentially you might find them interesting and join in on those things. There tends to be social waves of projects. Like one right now is a sword wave, where even the kids that did nothing other than coding games and whatnot are now going into the wood shop and making like whatever sword they have. We have this really big one that looks like a Final Fantasy one. The other guy's got double daggers. It started in right after Halloween, because some guys made daggers for the Halloween costumes, and then they kind of showed them around a lot, and they said, "Oh my god, that's cool! I want to try it." Right? So it allows the kids that would never otherwise have the chance to be exposed to those things have the chance to go in and play in that media to see if it might be something that they love and like. It allows the openness. In our studios, you don't sign up for coding, you don't sign up for robotics or engineering, you sign up for studio. The younger kids are a little bit more compartmentalized, but not by much. They're still in a room full of other people doing other stuff. But the idea is you come in, you start coding, you might not like it. There's a million other things you can see and you'll be exposed to them, so you might find it interesting. The other cool thing about it is that you're in a room full of other people doing other things that you might not be interested in, but you're still encouraging those kids and kind of nerding out a little bit about the things that they're nerding out about. You get to not be segmented into a small group of people that think exactly like you and you're in an echo chamber. You get to be in a room full of different people that are doing different things and working on different stuff that think in different ways. Sometimes, oh, I'm making my code. Can you think of a design way that might make this make more sense? You work up and you start talking to a designer because you're friends with them and they might have an idea. And this more accurately represents what you'd see in industry. If you're in a coding room full of only coders as a developer and there's no one else in your organization that does anything else, you're going to make a beautifully architected app that no one ever wants to use because there's no good design elements in it. No matter what industry you're in, you're interacting with someone of a different skill set. You're with a different mindset, with a different thing that they're passionate about. Our studio encourages you to cross relate, and we're working on making it remote too. We're setting up and working with virtual environments so that they work on projects remotely with kids in other countries, so that they learn how to do remote international, worry about time zone problems, asynchronous working, all those things. They're being exposed to this at like 10, 12 years old because that's more likely what their world will look like. But it makes them so that they are much more open to people that are not them, much more understanding of people that have different mindsets, and much more flexible in the way that they do their work so that they can leverage whatever resources around them, even if it's not directly in front of them speaking the exact same language. And that works really well for our kids that come to us. There are some kids that are just need a more rigid environment than that, right? And that's great. And we have lots of other friends and lots of other schools that we talk with and we partner with, and we recommend those schools because they'll get a more rigid curriculum. They'll get a more rigid pathway forward, right? There's a million types of people, you should learn to be you and leverage the things that are you. And the school systems that can be set up to do that the best and can be the most adaptive and most accepting to be able to move kids where they would work the best. Every now and then, throw them in another environment so that they're used to those environments. They should still have to interact in between each other. Find out what the ideal environment for a kid to be able to grow and foster what the kid can be, and make sure that they have access to that environment. Don't stop them from wandering outside that environment to explore new things, but like make sure that they have access to that environment so that they can grow. I think there should be multiple types of schools. I don't particularly think that college would have been a great resource for me. I think it would have slowed me down incredibly. But my wife, who's a very similar person to me, we both started our first businesses when we were about 12. She did in Russia, I did here. We're both educational entrepreneurs. She owns 3 daycares. I own 3 engineering schools. We cross link them all the time. But she loved the rigidity because it forced her to continuously get better. I break under that more often. So having those options is necessary.
What are some resources that you recommend that they plug into, whether it be books, podcasts, articles? What do you stay current with, and what would you recommend to other people?
I'm a bit of a weird case because I'm an entrepreneur, an engineer. So Guild is run just like a software startup and also like a school. Teachers should watch business podcasts, entrepreneurship podcasts, anything in and around that. A teacher that has been a lifelong teacher or they went to school just to become a teacher has to realize that they have zero experience in any of the industries they're preparing their kids for. I don't think it's possible for someone to prepare a kid for a world that they've never experienced. If educators spent more time engaging with industry and understanding how business works, understanding the job roles that they'll likely find their students in, they'll be more flexible and more understanding of why they're doing the things that they're doing. I can say very confidently as a teacher that I am preparing you for the MCAS, which is a Massachusetts standardized test. And you are learning this because it is on the MCAS test. But that's not really helpful to the kid. Sure, they get to go up a grade level, and that's nice in the micro. But if you look in the macro and you look and you think out 20 years from now, envision yourself as this first grader, right? 18 years in the future. If you don't know business and you don't know industry, then all you're doing is teaching them for a test. And that does not help them in their future at all. Engage with the business community. The business community will say things that make you feel bad because they're in a meritocracy of the entire market. One of the reasons we're not a nonprofit is because if I was a nonprofit, I could just go get a grant to study something, produce absolutely nothing, and then go get another grant afterwards and produce absolutely nothing. That is more often the case with ed startups. They're nonprofit. If I'm a business, I have to make a solution that is useful to people. And I have to be extremely conscientious of how I leverage money and influence. I have to be conscientious of what I'm doing and how well it helps them and what the people are actually telling me. It has to have a use. I can't pretend. And there are a lot of uncomfortable things that exist in that world. Me being immersed and engaged in that allows me to say, okay, let me get out of my fantasy world that this test actually matters, that this competency actually matters in the long run. And let me start thinking about why it matters and how they're going to use it. You'll never have a calculator when you go into work when you're an adult. Everyone has a calculator. If a calculator exists and it makes my job easier, it is required that I use it or I go out of business. Don't use AI to do this. Do it on your own. Yes, you should learn how to do it on your own, but you should also realize that no business in the world cares. They care about being able to produce something that is useful to someone. And the fastest way you can do that possible is the fastest way that that business is able to help the most people. So just immersing yourself in what's going on in a business world, understanding those struggles, understanding really the struggles that people are in trying to stay relevant in these industries, right? You can even choose one you're passionate about, right? There's business podcasts for latte shops, right? I There's My First Million is a great podcast that goes over people that are huge in tech space. There's Tim Ferriss, which is the author of the 1 Hour Work Week. He's great as far as just micro learning and figuring out how to break conventional learning patterns and understand how to make it as practical and useful as fast as possible. And he interviews the biggest entrepreneurs, business people, teachers, whatever, salsa dancers in the world to dissect how they got to be as good as they can be. If you're preparing these kids to be as good as they can possibly be, find other people that are good at what you want to do and figure out all the tricks they used. I would encourage it. I encourage all of my students also, not just teachers. Find something you're interested in and listen to the business podcasts about it. Right. Understand what that space looks like. The only other advice I'd have on that as well, do your best to listen to reputable podcasts that believe in the opposite of what you believe in, right? There is, generally speaking, no two polar opposites of opinion or thought process, right? It's all revolving around, it's usually closer to this, but we get really, really, really fixated on those outer boundaries because that's what our brains are programmed to do. We have to look for the weird little movement in the bush, not the entire thing in the background, to opinions that you do not agree with and look for things that you do agree with. If nothing else, it'll broaden the scope and understanding of what you can start thinking about it in a different way. That's one reason. But the other reason is because you have kids, especially in high school, that will believe the opposite of what you believe in, right? That does not make them wrong. And especially in traditional schools, there's a lot of polarization from a political aspect, but not just political aspects, right? Entire sociologies can be completely different, right? Views of technology can be completely different, right? Some people say no AI, that's stopping you from ever being the true artist that you are. And others say only use AI because that's the only thing that will exist. There's some truth in the middle of there. Learn to respect and understand other people's opinions that are not yours so that when that kid comes to you that is of a different opinion, you don't bully them. You can support that person and you can disagree with them and you can be open that you disagree with them, but that doesn't warrant saying that everything that they are is wrong and you should really just think like me. I see it a lot in every school I've ever worked in, right? Is that this kid has an opinion that is different than the social environment that they have. So in San Francisco has a different social environment than Texas or Arizona or Tennessee. And those two kids will learn two different things and both think they're right. And then when they have to meet somewhere in industry, they can't because their core understanding and belief is so rigid that they can't understand the other person. And if nothing else, that leads to war. And it leads to conflict and it leads to all the things that are going on right now. Be understanding. It sucks. It hurts, but that's fine. It's not about you. It's about the kid. Right? Feel whatever you want at home, right? Your job is to be there for the kid. Perform however you need to be there for the kid, right? And realize that some of the stuff you think is probably wrong too, right? And that's great and that's fine and you're allowed that, right? Read up on Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius is a great Tao Te Ching. Read up on philosophy. Stoicism is great because it basically believes that all of the world's problems are your fault and you kind of deserve it. So you have to really start looking into the gritty of like, why am I in this pain? And I can't blame them. I have to take ownership of it. Nihilism, nothing matters. Okay, how do you find meaning in that? Combine the two together, you have nothing matters, but it's all my fault. How do you then get the resiliency and the grit to be able to deal with that? But also, what does that make you start thinking about your own internal thought processes and how your own brain betrays you at every moment? There are great books on the theory of mind, the theory of consciousness. Mastermind by Maria Konnikova, How to Think Like Sherlock Holmes. It's a great book on understanding biasy and how to understand the biases that you are currently facing, then navigate around that in a way that is okay. If you're interested in adding more fun and making it more gamified, there's a guy, Yukai Chow, just released a book, 100 Hours of Play, which is how to take all of the things that you're trying to do in your life and turn it into a gamified quest. He has a more deep level thing called Octalysis framework on how you can build gamified elements into your classroom or into your business as well. Super cool from just a understanding how your mind tricks you into doing certain things and how you can become addicted to certain tasks. If you can addict yourself to the tasks that you want to do, like going to the gym, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but knowing that you're addicted to things like eating a pound of cheese every night while watching anime, not necessarily a great thing. Not saying I've had experiences with that. Learn how to master you, right? You're asking the kids to learn how to master themselves and you're helping them guide that way. Learn to master yourself so that you have the ability to understand what that looks like. You can then help a student learn to master themselves as well. Make sure that you learn how you operate, make sure that you learn your biases, and realize that just because someone thinks differently than you do doesn't mean that they're wrong. Just because you think the way you do doesn't make you right. And by mastering yourself, mastering your biases, mastering how you go and interact with the world, you're more likely to be able to have a truer perspective of what's really going on in the world. And if nothing else, maybe you can stop a fight. If these kids end up being and growing into politicians and world leaders, maybe they can stop a war. And that's a big responsibility, but it's their world, so it's their job to do that.
Think about your 10-year-old self. What advice would you have to give to that kid, that Dave?
It's supposed to suck. Distress is bad and will stop you from working and doing anything. Eustress is what's required to get you out of bed in the morning. Without that stress, without something to get you there, you won't keep going. The more resiliency you learn and the more you're okay with things going wrong, with things being difficult, the more powerful you'll become to see the truth, to help other people, and to actually be able to do and build the things that you want to do. But you cannot get there without the difficulty. It's supposed to be hard. And that's the only way you can be the person that you're supposed to be is by accepting that and as cheerfully as possible going through the difficulty, going through the suck. Again, my name's Dave Martelli. You can find me at the Dave Martelli, Martelli, on most of the social networks. And Guildhall Learning is the business's website. Feel free to check us out if you want some help making these programs in your school.
Thanks for being a part of our show today. And whether you're a teacher, a parent, or just EduCurious, join the community as we explore various educational topics and learn from each other. We'll see you next time.